Well, hello everybody. My name is Shannon Poe. I'm president of American Mining Rights Association, and we are representing most of the miners here in the room, as well as the public land users. And before we get started here, for the miners in the room, I just want to remind everybody is that the California Water Board isn't the enemy here today. I know everybody's frustrated. We've been kept out of the water for going on 8 years. California Water Board was, as a part of the law's passage, tasked with coming up with a permitting scheme. That's what they are. They didn't create this law, and I'm not trying to defend them. I'm not trying to defend DFG or any of these other agencies. All I'm saying is that they didn't create this bill, guys, and that's something that we need to remember, so we'll get on with this. This bill was originally brought forward by a senator from Hollywood that I can absolutely guarantee you had never even seen a dredge, knew what a dredge was. It was lobbied by a 501c3, and that is the Sierra Fund, for the passage of this. And when the bill was going through Congress, we counted the number of people there, and there were 187 people in opposition. That means us, the small miners. And there was 8 in favor, yet it still passed. So it kind of begs the question, as a representative republic, which is what we are, were you represented? So we'll come back to that later. Craig Lindsay has pointed out here very eloquently and articulately about the Fleck report, and I'm not going to go into that. I think Craig covered that quite well. This was passed with fraudulent science and fraudulent information to obtain a desired outcome. And that's specifically what happened here. Go ahead, Russell. Can you hit? This is a video of Ben Allen during that hearing.
This sort of argument, the arguments made about all the trash that's pulled out, this is all good stuff, right? I think we can all agree, and this is the kind of thing that the water board would look at and weigh. I mean, this is their job. This is their job ultimately. They're looking at water quality, they're looking at all the impacts, and I think it would be, the folks have a good case to be made about some of the positive environmental impacts associated with the mining, and this is what the board would take into account, and what we task them with.
So that's Ben Allen in his own words saying that the water board has been tasked with concocting basically a permitting scheme. So let's look at some of these things here. When we were down in Fresno at the first meeting, I had asked all of the California Water Board folks, as well as the DFG representatives in the room, or DFW, to raise their hands how many had actually operated a dredge. And nobody raised their hand. Only a handful of them had actually seen a dredge. So this is a picture of a modern, it's actually my dredge, one of my smaller dredges. This is a 4-inch, it's a modern suction dredge. And I would challenge anybody in this room, point to me specifically, where does the pollution come from? You can't. Where's the pollution discharged from? There is nothing. There's no addition, there's no pollution. It's de minimis and it's incidental fallback. What a suction dredge does, and we actually shot a video, we'll play it for you today. What a suction dredge does is it lifts the gravel from one location in the stream bed and it deposits it, in this case, about 15 feet away, but it deposits it there cleaner than it was when it lifted it up. Already, you've seen in the report that Craig just talked about, removes 99% of the mercury. It removes, I believe, 100% of the lead. I found pocket knives, lures, fishing hooks, old tennis shoes, for crying out loud. We found everything imaginable underneath the sun, and we removed that stuff. There is no addition. It's a net removal. It's called incidental fallback. Next slide, please. This is one afternoon. It's 13 pounds of fishing weights, lures, and hooks that was dredged in one afternoon. Next slide. This is a picture of one season with a dredge. I believe that this was on the Klamath River.
It's
And you can just
River.
see, American River, you can see how much is here. That'd fill a truck. California just announced, I think it was last week that I read about this, that they're going to eliminate the traditional lead weights and things that are used in fishing because they're concerned about the contamination in the rivers, lakes, and streams. Suction dredging cleans that from the waterways. I'm sure that the state or the government's going to create some kind of $100 billion project and give out grants to different agencies to go and collect that lead when suction dredgers do it for free. Actually, we generate revenue. Next slide, please. This is probably the best analogy that I think I've ever heard about what a dredge does. And the statement was actually by Ruth Bader Ginsburg. You may recognize that name. She's a United States Supreme Court Justice, the highest court in the land. And this is in the LA County case. And what she said was, and it's a very adept analogy as it pertains to suction dredging. This is a soup pot. If you dip a ladle into a soup pot and you lift that ladle back up out of the water, or back out of the soup, and you pour it back in, are you adding anything? And the answer is no. That's the same thing that a suction dredge does. You're moving material up and putting it right back down. So where's the addition? Where is the pollution? There is none. Next slide, please. This is a picture of a dirty floor. It's carpet. What do you do when your carpet gets really dirty? What do they do in this building here? It gets vacuumed. Under this ideology that you keep hearing about, what they want us to do is leave 99% of the contaminants on the carpet. They just, sounds like they don't even want to vacuum it. That's what a suction dredge does. As Craig has very, very eloquently pointed out with the Mercury studies, is there's no evidence whatsoever that suction dredging flowers mercury. And we're going to show you that video here in just a second. Next slide, please. Izzy will probably recognize this picture. That's her hand holding up 2 grams of mercury. The Sierra Fund received millions of dollars in taxpayer-funded grant money to go into Lake CAWB under the guise of removing mercury. $6.4 million to be exact, and they've recovered 2 grams of mercury. You can do the math on that. Next slide. This picture right here of this candle represents that 2 grams of mercury. And back in, I think it was 1999, when the EPA had the mercury collection program that they encouraged everybody to turn in their mercury after they were dredging, there was 245 pounds of mercury turned in that didn't cost the state anything. $6.4 million to get 2 grams, or the dredgers go out and do it for free, and you get 245 pounds. As a comparison, if that light right there, that little candle represents 2 grams, what does 245 pounds look like? Kind of a stark difference, and that didn't cost anything. That's 111,130 grams of mercury which were collected. The program was so wildly successful back in 1999, the beginning of the year 2000, that Carrie Monahan, actually of the Sierra Fund, she said that it was too successful. Next slide. There should be a video there.
So the tip for any legislator that would want to propose legislation to expedite the collection of this mercury, there'd be an amnesty element to that also, so that people would come
This
in?
has been done. In fact, it was done by Nevada County, and exactly, you could turn it over, no questions asked. It stopped because it was so successful. Liquid elemental mercury has to be disposed of as a Class 1 hazardous waste in Kettleman City. Very expensive process, and I believe the counties were overwhelmed with the response that they had. That doesn't mean it's not a great idea and it needs to be started again.
Oops. Pretty successful program. Why would we not want to clean the mercury out of our streams? Next slide. There's a video in there too.
When they say that a certain amount of mercury is collected by the suction dredge, you have to remember that there's many different forms of mercury. And so they are collecting liquid elemental mercury or mercury gold amalgam. That's a good thing.
No comment. Another video. This is Senator Ben Allen.
But you don't dispute the assertion that we've heard from opponents of the bill that they're actually removing 98% of the mercury in the form that it is, because it gets to your earlier testimony that when we have a turbulent rainstorm or we have our extreme weather that may come up, there would be less mercury in the river for whatever would happen with Mother Nature.
Yeah, I don't dispute that liquid elemental mercury is being captured by these physical processes.
Senator Allen,
I guess I just,
you get the last
well,
word.
first of all, this mercury collection issue that's come up, it seems an acute one, and the idea that they stopped it because it's so successful is very dissatisfying, to say the least. And I think we've heard today from a lot of folks who speak to the importance of the government getting a handle on this issue.
Next slide. So the program was too successful, and even Senator Allen, who came up with this bill with the lobbying efforts of Sierra Fund, thinks it is very dissatisfying that it was stopped. So why wouldn't we bring something like that back? We should bring this program back. And you need to understand what the economic impacts that suction dredging has. There was a study done, I think it was in 2006, that's put out by ICMJ Mining Journal, that suction dredgers spent $64 million a year in the state of California back when we could dredge. All of that money has been gone. Rural communities are being devastated. Restaurants, gas stations, RV parks, the list goes on and on and on of these rural communities that have been deeply and dramatically impacted. People aren't sending their kids to college as a result of this political ideology. And it's all not based on science. Next picture, please. So let's talk about turbidity. The science is pretty clear on turbidity, and I'm glad Craig put up all these pictures of the rivers in flood stage. I was going to do that and didn't get to it. This picture that you see here is of a small seasonal creek. This is taken in March of 2013, and then, next slide. That's taken from within 15 feet of where I took the other picture. That's taken a couple of weeks ago. The plume from a 4-inch suction dredge, like what you saw pictured earlier, goes for maybe 50 to 100 feet. This waterway flows into a larger river, which flows into a larger river, and it flows for 114 miles that this river was blown out. And they want to argue about 100 feet? I was talking with a buddy of mine this morning on the phone, and we were trying to determine how many of the mining claims in the state of California do not have anadromous fish, meaning salmon and steelhead, fish that return to the ocean. And although we don't have the exact statistic, we're pretty darn sure, and we're working on that it's upwards of 90% of the mining claims in California don't have any salmon or steelhead. Isn't that what the argument is about? Fish habitat. The same arguments trotted out each and every single time. We need to enact more regulations, or we need to have a moratorium. We need to do more studies because Suction dredging may, as you saw in Craig's presentation, or it might, or possibly, or could, maybe, potentially harm a fish at some point. There's only one study that I've ever read in the 30 years of research that I've looked at of a single fish being harmed by a suction dredge, and that was during a test where they kept jamming a fish through a nozzle over and over again until they finally killed the poor thing. I've been dredging since 1972, and I've never once, and I'll swear on the Bible, sucked a fish up a nozzle. And believe me, when I was young, I tried, and I can't do it. They're too damn fast, and it just doesn't happen. Even if you were to suck up a fish through a nozzle, we'll show you this. When we were down in Fresno at the other water board meeting, we went around the room and we had everybody raise their hand from DFG and also California Water Board. How many people had seen a dredge, and I think a couple of people raised their hand. We asked how many people had actually operated the dredge, and nobody raised their hand. So we're going to show you how a dredge works. We got a bunch of fruit, actually some tomatoes, apples, kiwi, all kinds of stuff. We're going to run it through here and show you how one of these things work, and that it doesn't grind up things. So let's start with this, the foot valve. The little holes in the foot valve are about the same width as a toothpick. So no fish or anything that really gets sucked up through there other than water. That pulls it up through here, it goes through the jet, it comes around, and it goes at this severe angle into the flare jet. And what that does is it creates suction. And then that gets sucked up through the end of the hose here, which you can see, this is a 4-inch hose, goes right through the jet, into the sluice box and out the back. And it's all open. There's nothing smaller than a 4-inch opening inside there. So let's run this and we'll show you how it works. So we just started up the dredge here, and you can see the hose sucks up the gravel from right here, and it just places it at the end of the dredge. Cleaner than when it picked it up. 99% of the mercury and 100% of the lead. Everything gets removed, cleaned, and deposited. There's no addition. So let's run some fruit through this. Tomato. And just in case anybody thinks that they froze these, tomato, man. There's a nice apple. Not a single bruise on it. Try a hair. No bruises. No bruises. Another tomato. Does not harm anything. Even if the fish did by chance get sucked up through the nozzle, this is the same hose that the DFT uses to stop the fish in the lakes, rivers, and streams. So don't believe everything that you hear from the environmentalists. Trust in science and your own eyes. I didn't know kiwis sunk. I apologize for that. We ran them through there and then couldn't find them, so. Actually, I think my dog found them. It's pretty basic here. You can see that in the video. There's no turbines, there's no grinding up or anything of material that goes through there. We're going to show you a couple of articles now. Next slide, please. This is all across the country. And I just did a simple Google search, guys, last Friday, believe it or not. I typed in to Google search, suction dredging to create fish habitat. And holy cow, there's Department of Fish and Game, Department of Fish and Wildlife, there's states, counties, all across America that have dredge operations right now to create fish habitat. Next slide. Here's one in Shelton, Washington. Next slide. Montgomery County. Dredging for fish habitat starts in Montgomery County. Next. Here's one of a Grand Canal project. That's in New York. Next. DFG helps create habitat for endangered pallid sturgeon, and they're running a suction dredge. Next. This gives you an idea how much our government charges to dredge. You notice the bill for $30 million? I can't pull that much gold out of the river, but next. Silver Creek, this is in Idaho. This is from December 9th, 2015. They dredged this to create fish habitat. Next. This one's going on as we speak. As a matter of fact, we had one of our AMRA members over there on Saturday and took pictures of it. They're running an 8-inch dredge to create fish habitat. So what's different here in California? Politics and ideology. Next slide. So how does the Fish and Game handle with the stocking of fish? There's a video there. Next slide. There's no sound to this, so I'm going to narrate this. So this is a holding pond. You can see that hose is the same hose that I use on all my dredges. And they're sucking the fish out of the holding tank and putting them in this truck right here. It's actually through a crash box where they bang the fish into a box and then they drop into a tank. Pretty resilient fish, aren't they? 1,530 of them. And there's the truck of fish pulling away. Next slide. So that truck goes to this location. And it gets put in an airplane at 122 miles an hour, 300 feet in the air. You can pause it there. That was 1,530 fish that they dumped out of the airplane 300 feet at 122 miles an hour. And I've been dredging since 1972, 73. Never sucked up a fish once. There's never any fish that get hurt. Most of the claims in California don't have anadromous fish. So what's this about? Let me explain what we call the perpetual cycle, and I'm wrapping up here. Get us so. The perpetual cycle is this. People lobby politicians all the time, and to try to get their own agenda. Most of the time it's for money. And so those politicians listen, they get donations or whatever it is, and they pass bills, whether they're unconstitutional or not. In our opinion, this bill is unconstitutional. It was passed with fraudulent science, deleted data. But they do this knowing that what do we have to do as citizens in order to prove them wrong? or in order to fight for our rights. We've got to do a grassroots movement, raise money, and sue our own government to retain our rights. That's what I call the perpetual cycle. They have unlimited amount of money to defend their actions, and they even pass bills so you can't sue them individually if they knowingly violate your rights. That's the perpetual cycle. So the California Water Board is tasked with creating a permitting scheme as a result of one side of the political spectrum listening to the environmentalists and their wishes, or they can make a recommendation that no permit is needed, and that's what we are recommending, is that no permit is needed. Real miners are arrested and their equipment has been confiscated for suction dredging, while those who started this bill and are politically aligned with the politicians who passed the bill are rewarded with millions to dredge. This is the very definition of what I call hypocrisy. DFG and states, as you've just seen here, are out there dredging to create fish habitat. Suction dredging isn't Parker Schnabel running a D10 in the Yukon. It's a miner trying to make a living. It's a miner who is environmentally responsible. It's a miner who has real property mining claim that he pays property taxes on, is being denied the ability to feed his family due to ideology and not facts. So we are asking that you consider the truth, the facts, and listen to the people whom this deeply impacts. We are also asking that you include us in this process, in the decision making, in your research and in your discussions as real property owners and stakeholders. We do not believe that the former system was broken, nor needs to be altered. But if you must, create a simple and a very inexpensive permitting process that can be rapidly processed. In other words, we want you to hear us and include us. Are you trying to run me off, Gita?
I have a lot of cards. I wanna make
I
sure
have
everyone
one
is-
last paragraph here. It's a simple, proven scientific fact that dredging removes 98% of the mercury. You've seen that, nobody is contesting that. It creates fish habitat. Even the governments of other states are using this method to create it. And it's not harmful to the environment. People's livelihoods are depending on you to see through the fog of deception, lies, and search for the truth for yourselves, as we have obviously provided to you today. Thank you.
Thank you.